there was something about this really visceral, real material that we're exploring that we felt would translate to film really well. And very early on we said, okay, let's create a film.
How to put the material on screen and how to approach that. A lot of the material in the performance is really endurance based, and it's kind of live endurance.
Coming in to this process was very interesting for me because I first was asked to document Lee and Mirabelle's and Matt and Clare's performance work at the performance space, and it was really raw. It was uncharacteristically raw. It was unruly, and it was quite confrontational. And because of the energy that was present within the live act, the translation from live to screen was always going to be an issue. So because of that, we largely went with almost a documentary approach to the process, a verite aspect of cinema. It's a process where maybe we let the camera cover the action, and we did this through, we shot everything through 2 cameras, so the covering was done using a basic wide, and we let the second camera rediscover the action, which was done through a very close-up. So you have a process where it's largely driven by the performative work as opposed to the film language, and then afterwards, through the angles that were captured, we rediscovered the material. Then the third element was actually cutting and editing, and this was the most problematic aspect because through cutting it basically messed with the endurance and durational aspect, but it yielded something else.
There is a real sort of connection between the performance work and the film work, in the sense that when we were making the performance, we really wanted to immerse the audience in a kind of cinematic experience. So the performance piece has a large wooden sort of catwalk that's a square, and it's a whelping box, which is basically a wooden box that's built for birthing puppies. And that's kind of a little bit of a connection to the thematics, but we built this wooden box, which is a large acoustic device that the audience are inside of, and that wooden box has microphones throughout it. And so all of our movement and action during the performance is amplified and played back at the audience, and it really does immerse you in that experience like cinema does, because I often with performance find that I'm a little bit disappointed in comparison to, say, the film experience, where it feels like you're right inside the action. So we wanted to try and create that experience with the performance. And so it seemed logical in a way to, when we started making the film, that we could try to translate that experience. But it wasn't, it didn't work that well in some ways. Like some of our performance material, when we filmed it and then we watched it later on to start editing, it seemed too gross for film. Like gross in the sense of being too big and too in your face, and film needs to be more subtle in some ways, like more internal performance. There's something about the proximity of the audience and us that kind of really makes the performance work. It really, there's a certain kind of like sort of shock value, you know, in the physical body being in such close proximity, and the social sort of situation that's set up where this side of the audience can watch this side of the audience and see how they respond to what's going on with us. And there's something very social about that whole experience that the camera doesn't have, or it's a very different kind of social experience to watching the screen and how you react to it. It's nobody's watching you sitting in the dark experiencing this. So yeah, that translation to the film was completely lost. And then so you have to find another way that the camera can be alive, you know.
Whether in another exhibition, if this work is shown again, it might be interesting to show it in a sort of peephole environment, something that really amplifies the discomfort of the audience in watching these sort of ritualistic acts when you're not quite sure what's happening, why it's taking place, but you have a vague sense of unease.
Within the performance context, it's fleeting. You can't necessarily refer back to it. It occurs once, and depending on where you are in the location, that's the point of view that you experience. Within the recorded image, it's indelible. You could go back to the recorded image, and it seals it. And I think being confronted with that indelible image that can't be wiped away, that single perspective, when in fact previously within a performance context there were multiple perspectives. We chose not to storyboard, and maybe we decided not to storyboard. Maybe the performers also discovered aspects of the performative action that they weren't privy to while performing, and also the designers also saw that the set looked a certain way or appeared a certain way. That shouldn't be that way, that shouldn't be that way. So that it's a whole process of rediscovery through the recorded image, which I think was interesting but also challenging.
You should never make a film collaboratively. You're supposed to have a director and a single vision, and the idea to make a film occurred really early on in our first research for this project. We had a residency at Hot House Theatre in Albury, so we were working on a farm in a big shed, and every day we would create tasks and provocations for one another. And some of these tasks and provocations would involve, you know, being blindfolded and then being raced down a dirt track, and you wouldn't, you know, like, it was very, very real for us.
How to translate that to the screen in a shorter time frame and to get that across was really challenging. And in the end, I think the film has just become something different completely, but it's kind of got its own logic and kind of magic because of the environment that it's in.